whenever they wanted to,
Yeah, I'm ready.
whenever they wanted to contact, he was the person that was approached. And Begin would, when I took over the department, so to speak, would give the okay for the interview, and Yoel would decide where the interview could take place and what the hour would have to be, and how the journalist or whoever it was would be brought to the point of meeting. If there were people that we could rely upon, for example, well-known Zionists from abroad, they could come they could come themselves to the point of meeting. If they were journalists, in many cases they were told, they were seen at night, and they were brought to the place of meeting by a roundabout route, traveling through all kinds of states before they got to the point of meeting.
Did you meet with when you were going to be meeting with journalists? Did you have preliminary meetings to discuss what you were going to be saying, or this was all up to you?
No, never had that. No, we didn't. There was nobody ever gave away any secrets. I think she would check all the newspaper reports arising from interviews with good members. She would find that no secrets were ever given away. Usually we managed, or at any rate I managed to discuss with the political aspects of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would ask, or they would also ask such questions: why did you do this? Why did you attack a train carrying ammunition for the British? Well, it's obvious why we did it. The aim of the Irgun was so simple that there was not very much to talk about really, and the journalists were concerned. First of all, they're simply having a byline in the paper. They're dealing with this.
How did they describe you? An unnamed high place source, or
to describe anything? I was described that not only I know this guy, the man with whom we made contact frequently afterwards. Now I've forgotten his name, of course. Was the AP correspondent,
right,
who had reported very, I would say, objectively about the Irgun, and who described, after meeting with me, that we looked like bank clerks. You see, I realized this later on, that people thought he was good as,
right,
guy, bandit, cowboy hat, and two revolvers and belts, and a couple of daggers around. And actually, it looks like Begin, but it looks like Shmuel Katz. That I think Fox did more than anything else. Because the fighting units who were younger, and people like Giddy who were in their 20s, Begin and I were in their 30s. And there were several people in their 30s, but they weren't in the fighting units.
Mm-hmm.
So even the British only came across, when they captured anybody, they captured youngsters of 22, 23, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And people generally expected them to look like bandits, you see. They were all just respectable Jews. We'll come to that later. And so I had brought with me from England a book which I got from several books had to be read. They ought to be read, for example, books on other underground movements. I had quite a wide knowledge of underground movements for the time I came to Israel, to Jerusalem. I had a book of addresses of newspapers in Britain, every newspaper in Britain, from the Times down to the Village Voice. And I sent out, I didn't send very many letters or circulars to them, but some I sent. For several hundred copies of things I wrote down, explaining what the Hebrew was doing, and using the line, what in hell are you doing here? Why are you endangering the lives of the people? I said this not only to newspapers, I also had the addresses of the local councils, the elected councils of all the towns in England.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that was the line that Churchill had begun to take. And he was now attacking the government in Parliament, the Labour government, with the theme, if you can't beat them, get out.
Mm-hmm.
Which fitted exactly with what we wanted. Churchill was probably one of our best weapons at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff I sent was also, I didn't attack them. These were not, I was not writing about the government, attacking the government, except on this one point.
Mm-hmm.
That they were simply endangering the lives of youngsters, whose parents were in the villages that I wrote to, or towns that I wrote to. I also published several numbers, not regular, because I wasn't being regular. I was, as you'll see, I didn't stay in Tel Aviv all the time. I moved around. I left the country several times during that year. And I published a bulletin called the Irgun Press, which exists in the Jabotinsky
Jabotinsky Institute. The Institute. The Machon. The Machon.
Machon.
Did you, when the Irgun published broadsides, little posters in English, did you write those, or?
What's that?
When the Irgun was always publishing wall posters that they were pasting up on the walls.
Yes.
So some of them were in Hebrew and some of them were in English.
No.
That didn't go through you.
Not that I know of, no. No, there must have been. Of course, there must have been. There were. But in the special cases, for example, the hanging of the sergeants, the threat to hang.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm forgetting we were already in 1947. Yes, I don't remember many cases of that.
So you did write those?
There was, that I remember definitely, about the hanging, because we said if you'll hang our soldiers, we'll hang yours.
Right.
No. If you would our soldiers, would yours. Later on we we prefer to hang at the same time, because somebody discovered that on one of these posters, somebody had written at the bottom in English,
Right, please don't forget.
Don't forget my sergeant major.
But so you were responsible for that text?
No, I wasn't responsible. I wasn't here. I was in London. I was in London again. I was in London in December, and I was in London in March. Don't ask me to remember the exact dates.
Okay.
I don't. Because I was in London when the hanging took place, when the whooping took place, and was able to judge the reactions. There were two distinct reactions to the whooping. One was very laudatory reactions. You know, people cheering us for doing this. They also didn't like the idea of people being good. And the other very angry that these bloody Jews are daring to do things to our officers, to attack our officers.
So you didn't write the ones about the hanging either. When you were talking about hanging the sergeants.
No.
Those you didn't write either.
About hanging, I didn't write a poster. No. I wrote in this Irgun press. I wrote about it that the hangings would not be a one-way street. That if they hanged our people, we would hang their people. No. That warning was certainly written only by Begin, couldn't be done by anybody else. I don't remember that. Could I have written it? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I was here. And the place was here. We were asked to vote on the subject. There had been a decision in principle that if they hanged, then we would do the same. And in fact, there would have been a retaliation earlier on in the case of Gruner and his friends, his comrades, but they couldn't get anyone. They couldn't find a British soldier or officer, because they kept out of the way. They were told to. They were not allowed to walk alone in the towns, and they shouldn't visit any cafes and things like that. So it was difficult to get them. It was quite a difficult job to get them in the end, after the last hangings, and it was only done because the good girls allowed themselves to be picked up. I don't think anything particular happened to them, but some of the soldiers were not careful. That's how the people that we had looking for them got in touch with them. Also there I don't know any details. I only know that when they were in our hands, your Amrami came round on a motorbike to make sure of our opinion, of the unanimity of the leaders on the subject of the hangings.
When you were on the High Command, did you ever meet as a High Command together, or all of your meetings were by proxy?
No, we met together. This was the one case that I remember where we were visited and asked to vote to give our opinion. No, we had meetings, not regular. We had meetings, I think all of them were at Begin's house, which was the headquarters. Begin seldom moved out of the house. There were occasions when he went and spent a day or 2 days in another neighborhood. As a matter of fact, my first meeting with Begin that I've mentioned was not in his house, in the house of one of the older members of the IZL. We used to meet at his house. There were no guards around, and they were, just turn up, and the bell that you rang was simply a code twice or three times. There were never any guards or anything like that to draw any attention to his house. The house was opposite the 50 yards from the main auditorium. It existed. It had 3 entrances. As it happened, I don't remember why it had 3, but it did have 3 entrances. Still has, no doubt.
Yes.
No, and we never had long meetings. Begin had a principle that no meeting should last more than, I think it was 2 hours, something like that. And there was, in those meetings, meetings that took place as long as I was a member of the there was always a decision by consensus. Begin never imposed his views on the others. He had done it once before when I wasn't here, on the question of retaliation to the saison. When the others were all in favor of retaliation, and Begin was against retaliation and insisted on there being no retaliation. But during my membership of the High Command, Begin always asked for people's opinions, and if they weren't, they sometimes were. The majority of people, or perhaps not even majority, he would drop his suggestion. The problem often arose of the danger of operations, of urban operations, killing civilians. And whenever there was such a danger, we dropped the operation. I mean, there was always a warning at any rate given at the place, like in the case of the King David Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
The High Command was actually quite democratic fashion, and anybody was free to express his opinion and even to have it accepted without Begin's actually being in favor or being against the matter. Usually it was a consensus, because also again the issues very simple. What were the issues? Not no complicated issues here.
Okay, so let's try to limit the since I'm going to run out of tapes, and let's try to limit the discussion to your particular jobs or missions that you were now a member of the High Command. You were in charge of English language propaganda and meeting people on behalf of the Irgun. What was the next task or mission that you were given?
I'm trying to remember it. I spent most of the time, for several months I spent here. I didn't move. It's funny, I worked, I was given an office. It was an empty, what empty, I don't know, a jeweler's shop in Allenby Road.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given a secretary. His name I didn't know then, I can't remember now. She had a name of some sort. And only Abraham knew where I was. And only Abraham knew where everybody was.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can say safely that every one of us knew only what he needed for what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
There were never any discussions among the members. I didn't know any of the people in the High Command personally. My only contact with them was when we met at Begin's house, and we never talked about anything. We never met. Never had a cup of tea or coffee with any of him. And that was the rule. And so, while in the early days of Begin's running the Irgun, there had been trouble with spies actually, people who had sold secrets, there was Hilevich, there was another guy named Reinhold, who actually was responsible for a couple of deaths. He managed to escape to Europe, to Belgium. There's going to be a book about that very soon by a man named Escher, who was also caught by the police, but fortunately for him at any rate, he was not tried. They relaxed everything. When we hanged the sergeants, there were no more hangings.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, Escher, at any rate, who was here the night before last, he was definitely a candidate for hanging because he was caught together with, rather he was not caught, he was caught later then, but he had been together with Feinstein in the attack on the railway station in the bush. He managed to escape. They caught him afterwards. And they knew what he had done. He'd done a lot of research and gone to England and spoken to some of the British officers of the time. So they knew what he was doing. We had this discussion here when he came to see me. Was he writing a book and he wanted to be clear why when he should have been sent to trial, he wasn't sent to trial. And the police officer who was in charge of his case didn't know. Escher should have gone to trial, but instead he was sent to Latroon, where they had arrested the agency people, and where they kept a lot of prisoners for a time. And the police officer, Sullivan, John Sullivan, or Sullivan, I think, had written a letter to Escher's sister, who had made an inquiry about his whereabouts and so on, and wrote to her that he was about to be sent to trial.
Mm-hmm.
So there had obviously been an order from headquarters or from London to not to cause any more trouble from our side. And so they went easy on him. He still he lives this thing all the time, and he wanted to be sure that he'd been saved by the fact that we had done what we had done. And so where was I?
So we're going through your official positions or
Yes,
official
well,
jobs
yes.
or missions.
I spent a lot of time with Begin because I was one other person in the High Command who had a political background. I was first of all the only person who had had contact with Jabotinsky, and it was at our first meeting, so I think I should mention, it's very important. At our first meeting in July, after I got back from England, Begin said to me, do you remember our last meeting? I think I told you the
Yes,
story.
you told me the story last time.
Right. And so Begin had a certain conception of who I was and what I was before I came. It was rather, in my opinion, rather exaggerated because what Jabotinsky had said. But then I was a person with whom we could discuss the politics of the. We didn't have many discussions of the politics because everything was very clear then in the Mefkada itself, and so he used to discuss with me every move that he wanted to make, all the questions that arose were not put to the Mefkada before he spoke to me. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't know how else to describe it. He needed some, I think he needed some political backing in his handling of the Irgun. Backing by which I mean I would say something of the subtleties of political action, because we used to discuss the relations with the Jewish agency. There was always a danger of some new saison being carried out against us. There was always pressure on us to give up the fight because the British were pressing the Jewish agency and telling them why in hell you're allowing these people to carry on. The Jewish agency said, well, we're doing our best and we promise you that we'll deal with it. So these questions occupied us as well, and there was always a need for assessing what was being said in the newspapers and what the Jewish agency was doing, and that was a fruitful field for discussion between me and Begin, or to put it more correctly, between Begin and me. We acted together as a kind of political department, you see. And that's why some of the Irgun people used to describe me as a foreign minister. It was later in the game when people got to know me after the underground, after we got out of the underground.
That was the foreign minister of Lehi was Yelenmore. He was considered, that's what they used to call him.
Well, I'm not sure. There were three of them, and each one of them was they were all equal, I think. I think they were on equal terms. We had Fredman Yelin and
Well, Shamir was the operations, and Eldad was the ideology, and Yellen Moore was the diplomacy.
Maybe.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, I had no contact with him in the underground. Yeah, I had contact with Scheib, with Eldad, but only off the underground when I came to Jerusalem.
What was your contact with him?
He was the head of the Lehi in Jerusalem at the time. And yes, I think I saw him only when the government was arresting people of the Lehi. You know, after the business got big. And they were looking for Lehi members and arresting them. And I had I don't know how this came to you, I don't remember. I had an early morning call on the Saturday morning. He was killed on the Friday. Bernardo was killed on the Friday. Early Saturday morning, my deputy in the Irgun came to ask me if I would issue membership cards, Irgun membership cards, which we now had, to a lot of Lehi people who were in danger of being arrested, which I agreed, and they remained unarrested. And I think it was in that connection somehow that I met Scheib. The only occasion I met him. I didn't know him. Begin, of course, knew him very well. I didn't meet anybody that I didn't have to meet. Suited me perfectly. And so, at any rate, I used to spend a good deal of time what we might call political analysis, political planning with Begin. Also doing propaganda interviews and so on. If I wouldn't have done it in any case, that's the kind of situation where you should keep a diary. But I never kept a diary in my life. I should have done, but not then. That was exactly the problem. You couldn't, you should, but you couldn't keep a diary. But I used to scribble. I had a best book, little best book, and I used to make cryptic notes in it when I needed them for immediate use. Yes, I should have told you that in the March 47, we had the martial law imposed on us. And just at that time, I think it was my third visit to Europe, either my second or my third visit, I was questioned by the CID. Now I had prepared, with the help of the group in America, the Bergson group, I had prepared a number of letters from, ostensibly from publishers, because I was going to establish a publishing house. That was my cover story, so to speak. And that I was trying to raise money for it and so on. And I came back from one of those visits exactly during the martial law period. And I was taken into a little room and questioned as to where I'd been, with whom I'd been, and so on. And while I was in the room, I was sitting opposite the police officer in Jaffa. It was at police headquarters in Jaffa. And behind me, a guy walked into the room, walked as far as the window, and stood there. I couldn't see what he was doing there. What he was doing was looking at me. Mm-hmm. And then he went out and came another guy and did the same thing. And it became clear that they shared the idea of some other people that I had some resemblance to Big. In fact, there was once a journalist who wrote that I was his double. Mm-hmm. Later on, when Begin visited America. And there was something in it. The matter is, there was some resemblance between us, and there were points of resemblance. He had a sister who also looked even more like my sister. So it's possible that 2 or 3 generations behind us there was some contact, because they were on the Polish border and my people came from Latvia. So it occurred to me that this man, I had been called to the office in order to have a look at me. They sent me home, and they had taken from me at the airport, they had taken all the papers I had in my pockets. They didn't actually search me, they asked me to hand them. And it was fortunate for me because my little notebook was left in my pocket. Mm-hmm. Then a few days later, I think the same policeman that had come to tell me that I was wanted in the police station came and gave my wife back all my papers. The next time I traveled through, I can't remember, when I went the next time, I forgot to replace these papers by some new papers. Mm-hmm. And I had the same experience that I had had the first time. I was asked to show him what I had in my pocket. And he looked at them and threw them down and said, "I've seen these bloody things before." It was the same detective. Of course, it was silly of me, but you could connect them up. They were letters. I remember what they were. There were 3 or 4 publishers who wrote, ostensibly, you see, who wrote to me that we could have a discussion next time I was in London, next time I was in Paris, or something like that. That could apply in any case. But it was silly of me. It was careless. I remember his face. It was, with disgust. Oddly enough, this was in 1947. So I had that experience with detectives. And then another year went past, and we had a state. And I was elected a member of the Knesset, beginning of 49. And a few months after that, I visited England. I don't remember, it's something to do with the Gun. I don't remember what, in retrospect. And at the airport in London, the first time I was respectable member of Parliament. After I had gone through the customs and the immigration department, while I was in the customs, somebody appeared at the far door and made some sign to the man who was looking through my luggage. And then I was asked to go into a room and I was searched This is 2 years after the state was established. So I think that my name, for my person at which had been known to them, I was living under my own name at finally reached London. Very interesting. As Schlemilisch, they were in their handling of things, in many respects.
Okay, so let's try to make a list of your positions, and we've got you now. You're the political department of the Irgun, handling the propaganda, meeting the journalists, and we're coming up to pretty much to the end of the underground war.
Well,
were you sent on any other specific missions or given any other jobs?
No. I was in Europe again in the fall. At the time that Britain announced that she was leaving a mandate, that she was giving up the mandate in September, I was in England. My job in England, every time I went, was mainly to report back my impressions of what the feeling in the country was. Now, there was another project on which I was engaged. It had nothing to do with propaganda, and was something that I had simply done on my own, because I happened to be there, you see. The Irgun, the British were carrying out their policy of preventing immigrants. They were sending.
Oh, so you were doing another project while you were there.
What's that?
You were running.
Yes. So the Irgun took up the attitude. Trying to think of the dates of this again to find the relationships in my book Yomaesh. That we would always retaliate if specific actions of the British. Apart from the concept, I should mention this, the concept that was developed in the Irgun was not to retaliate to British action. There was the war on, and we took what action we thought necessary to carry on the war. That was the opposite of what the Ghana had always done. They only reacted to what the British did. And but what could we do in the case of the immigration? What we had done with the embassy in Rome. True, but in the field, so to speak, there was nothing we could do. Or so it seemed. Well, we had friends in England, friends of the Irgun, and I knew one of them who had been an officer in the British Navy. One of my earlier visits to England in the early part of 1947, must have been in March, he told me that he had a non-Jewish friend who had been knew from the Navy, who had been an officer in the Navy, who was disgusted with the British attitude to the Jews who had come out of Europe, the DPs, how they were behaving to the immigrants, people who were trying to get to Palestine. There were quite a lot of British who had that view. And that he had an idea that it might be possible to carry out an attack on a British ship. How? The ship would be empty. It would be in port, undergoing whatever it had to undergo there, cleaning or so on. And while it was